Imagine staring down the barrel of an atomic apocalypse. Beneath your feet, thousands of tons of radioactive molten magma are slowly burning through a concrete floor. Just inches below that cracking concrete lies a massive reservoir of water. When the two elements finally meet, the resulting explosion will instantly vaporize half of a continent, poison the water supply for 30 million people, and render Europe an uninhabitable wasteland for centuries. You are told the only way to stop it is to put on a wetsuit, walk into a pitch-black, highly radioactive flooded basement, and open a valve by hand. Would you walk into certain death to save a world that doesn't even know it is ending? Welcome back to VerityVault, where we uncover the untold and unlock the darkest corners of human history. Today, we are opening a file that will make you question everything you thought you knew. In the 1970s, deep within the heart of the Soviet Union, near the border of Belarus and Ukraine, humanity built a monument to its own hubris. The Chernobyl nuclear power plant, to house the thousands of workers and scientists needed to run this behemoth. The government constructed an entire utopian city from scratch just 3 kilometers away. It was called Pripyat. By 1986, Pripyat was home to nearly 50,000 people. It was a model of Soviet engineering and domestic bliss. It had middle schools, sprawling gymnasiums, pristine swimming pools, cafes, and an iconic amusement park waiting to be opened. The residents lived in the comforting shadow of the plant, entirely unaware that the concrete beast humming in the distance was about to unleash an invisible hell on Earth. How do you fight an enemy you cannot see, hear, or touch? An enemy that burns you from the inside out? On the night of April 25th into the early hours of the 26th, the engineers in the control room of Reactor Number 4 prepared for a long-delayed safety test. The goal was ironic in hindsight. They wanted to see if, in the event of a total power failure, the spinning turbines could generate enough residual electricity to keep the vital water cooling, pumps running for just 30 seconds. The exact time needed for the backup diesel generators to kick in. It was a test designed to prevent a core meltdown. Instead, it guaranteed one. I will spare you the highly complex physics, but to understand the terror of this night, you need to understand the beast. A nuclear reactor is, essentially, a giant steam engine. Radioactive fuel, like uranium-235, reacts inside the core, generating unfathomable heat and radiation. This heat boils water into high-pressure steam, which spins massive turbines to create electricity. To keep the reactor from turning into a bomb, control rods are inserted into the core to absorb the neutrons and slow the reaction down. But that night, a catastrophic combination of fatal design flaws, exhausted operators, and disabled safety protocols created a perfect storm. The operators lost control of the reactor's power. The core temperature skyrocketed. In a sheer panic, they smashed the emergency shutdown button, dropping all the control rods back into the core at once. But it was too late. The cooling water inside the reactor instantly flashed into a massive volume of superheated steam. The pressure was unimaginable. At 1:23 a.m., reactor number 4 detonated. The explosion was so violently powerful that it blew the 1,000-ton biological shield roof clean off the building, exposing the burning radioactive core directly to the open night sky. 2 workers were instantly vaporized in the blast. Moments later, the remaining water rushed into the ruined core, reacting with the superheated metal and causing a second, even larger explosion. Chunks of highly radioactive graphite were violently thrown across the facility like demonic shrapnel. When the local firefighters from Pripyat arrived, they had no idea what they were walking into. The government, terrified of looking weak to the West, kept the true nature of the disaster a secret. The brave firemen thought they were fighting a standard roof fire. They'd picked up the burning pieces of graphite with their bare hands. They didn't know their skin was melting not from the heat, but from gamma radiation tearing through their cellular structure. Almost all of those first responders would die in agonizing pain within weeks. But the horror of April 26 was only the beginning. By May, the fires had been extinguished, but a much darker, much deadlier threat was quietly brewing in the ruins. The nuclear core was still melting. It had transformed into a substance called Corium, a terrifying, glowing, radioactive lava made of melted uranium, graphite, and concrete. And this lava was slowly burning its way down through the floor of the reactor. The Soviet engineers realized to their absolute horror what lay directly beneath the melting floor: a massive subterranean reservoir. It was filled with millions of gallons of coolant water and the water the firefighters had pumped into the ruins. If that 3,000-degree radioactive magma breached the concrete and hit that massive body of water, it would trigger a catastrophic thermal steam explosion. Some physicists calculated the blast would yield between 3 to 5 megatons of force. To put that into perspective, that is roughly 140 to 230 times more powerful than the atomic bomb dropped on Nagasaki. It would have instantly vaporized the other 3 functioning reactors at Chernobyl. It would have wiped out the entirety of Ukraine and half of Europe. The resulting radioactive fallout would have permanently poisoned the water supply for 30 million people. Europe as we know it would have ceased to exist. The math was brutal. The solution was simple, yet seemingly impossible. Someone had to go down into the flooded, pitch-black basement and manually open the sluice gates to drain the water before the lava reached it. But the basement was a flooded tomb of hyper-radioactive water. Anyone who went down there would be exposed to over 5,000 roentgens per hour. A lethal dose is 400. This was a suicide mission. The Soviet command gathered the plant workers. They didn't sugarcoat it. They explained that whoever volunteered would likely die a horrific death from acute radiation sickness. The only comfort they offered was a promise: your families will be taken care of by the state. In the heavy, suffocating silence of that room, 3 men stepped forward: Alexei Ananenko, Valeri Bespalov, Boris Baranov. Remember their names. They weren't soldiers. They were engineers and plant workers. Ananenko and Bespalov had actually helped design the pumping system. They knew exactly where the valves were located in the labyrinth of pipes. Baranov volunteered to carry the submersible light. They strapped into thick rubber diving suits, carrying crude dosimeters and a single unreliable flashlight. They descended into the abyss beneath Reactor 4. As they entered the basement, the water was waist deep. It was completely black. The air was thick with the suffocating heat of the melting core above them. But the most terrifying part was the physical sensation of the radiation. Have you ever tasted metal when there is nothing in your mouth? Within seconds, the men felt a sharp, bitter metallic taste coating their tongues. Their skin began to prickle, a terrifying sensation like thousands of microscopic needles piercing their flesh all at once. This wasn't a metaphor. It was the physical feeling of their DNA being bombarded and destroyed by ionizing radiation. They waded through the murky, contaminated water. Their dosimeters, designed only for standard levels, maxed out and screamed continuously. The flashlight flickered, casting long, nightmarish shadows across the rusted pipes. At times, they had to climb up onto the massive pipes, balancing precariously in the dark to minimize their physical contact with the lethal water. Time was running out. The lava above was getting closer. Finally, in the terrifying gloom, Ananenko's flashlight beam hit the metal wheels of the sluice gates. They had found them. With their hearts pounding, surrounded by invisible fire, they grabbed the heavy wheels. They were stiff, rusted, and stubborn. But fueled by the adrenaline of knowing the fate of millions rested in their hands, they forced the valves open. The water began to drain. They had done it. They trudged back through the flooded corridors, emerging into the light where their colleagues were waiting. There was no grand ceremony, just the exhausted applause of men who knew what had just been prevented. Now, history loves a tragedy. For decades, the legend surrounding the Chernobyl suicide squad was that all 3 men died within days, buried in lead coffins, having sacrificed their lives for humanity. But the truth of VerityVault is often stranger than the myth. The men did not die that week. In a bizarre twist of physics, the very water that was highly contaminated actually acted as a shield, absorbing the most lethal of the gamma rays before they could entirely penetrate the men's organs. When they got out, they suffered from what was called a nuclear tan. Their legs, which had been submerged the longest, were stained with dark, unnatural shadows from radiation burns. Valeri Bespalov remembers standing in the decontamination showers for hours, scrubbing his skin raw. Yet, every time he held the dosimeter to his own chest, the machine still screamed. The radiation was inside him, but miraculously they lived. Boris Baranov passed away from a heart attack in 2005. Alexei Ananenko and Valeri Bespalov are, astonishingly, still alive today. These three ordinary men stared directly into the eyes of a nuclear apocalypse and walked into the dark anyway. They saved millions of lives, including the lives of those in neighboring countries who were blissfully unaware of how close they came to annihilation. And the dark irony? While these men waded through radioactive poison to save the continent, politicians miles away were sipping tea, telling their citizens on television that a little radiation never hurt anyone. Some secrets are meant to stay buried, but here at VerityVault, we always find the key. What do you think really happened in this case? Let me know in the comments below. If you want to dive deeper into the unknown with us, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell. Until next time, stay vigilant